Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're doing something really cool. We're taking your standard, run-of-the-mill 20-word vocabulary list and we're transforming it into an absolute epic. We're talking survival, absolute power, and ancient philosophy. Because as this source material proves, learning new words absolutely does not have to be some dry, boring exercise. We're using history as our classroom today.
So think about this for a second. Can learning just 20 words literally transport you to the front lines of a Roman battlefield? It's a great question, right? Because instead of just staring at flashcards and memorizing dictionary definitions, we're going to see how language breathes actual life into history. It drops us right smack in the middle of a war zone. When you anchor these complex terms to a really vivid narrative, your retention just skyrockets. So let's dive right in and meet our guide.
All right, picture this. We are way out on the freezing, miserable northern frontier of the Roman Empire, and we meet a guy named Blasius. He's a domestic slave, and he's serving the exhausted Emperor Marcus Aurelius during this absolutely grueling military campaign against a rogue Germanic tribe. You can practically feel the weariness of the camp. It takes a massive amount of effort just to survive the freezing elements here, let alone survive before the enemy even attacks.
And Blasius's own words instantly set the stakes. He says, "I am starving but would not presume to eat. I am ever vigilant to possible plots against his life." Boom. Just like that, completely naturally, we're introduced to our first two vocabulary words. The guy is surrounded by war and intense political intrigue. Every single day, his life depends on extremely careful behavior and super sharp senses.
Notice how perfectly these dictionary definitions map onto his survival strategy. Blasius wouldn't dare take the liberty, he wouldn't presume, to eat before his master. And in a world absolutely crawling with assassins and traitors, he has to remain intensely watchful or vigilant against poisoners. He literally tastes the emperor's beef and wine first. That is a highly vigilant act that could easily cost him his own life.
Then, suddenly, the quiet tension in the camp shatters. As the battle kicks off, the text hits us with two really powerful words of motion and conflict to describe the Germanic tribe's assault. That quiet vigilance we just talked about, completely broken by violent, sudden action. The enemy launches a sudden volley, a salvo of arrows, just raining them down on the legionnaires. To survive this, the Romans have to strategically reposition. They scramble for higher ground so they can build the driving force, the momentum they need to strike back effectively. You can totally picture that tactical shift, right? Words like salvo and momentum, they aren't just abstract ideas on a page here. They are literal matters of life and death on this battlefield.
But here is where the narrative gets incredibly deep. The text highlights this fascinating, really striking contrast. On one hand, you have the sheer chaos of the outside world, and on the other, the emperor's incredible internal calm. Marcus Aurelius was, famously, a Stoic philosopher, and that unique mindset directly shapes the vocabulary we use to describe him.
Let's unpack some of these conflict words: fluster, brawl, flagrant, and wrath. Back in Rome, unruly politicians brawled with flagrant, meaning glaringly scandalous, disrespect. Now, normally, this kind of behavior would easily incur a ruler's wrath, bringing down some intense, fiery anger. Yet the text points out that despite all this brawling and the flagrant disregard for his authority, Marcus Aurelius remains rock steady. He absolutely refuses to be flustered or agitated by the chaos around him.
And this quote right here brilliantly illustrates that Stoic philosophy in action. He genuinely believes that all men are, by their very nature, equal. So here he is in the middle of a brutal war zone, and he actually notices his servant is shivering. He tells him to go get warm. It's a really striking moment of humanity, and it perfectly tees up our next set of words.
Let's see how this relationship builds Blasius's character. Because the emperor actively supported his education, Blasius is no longer some inexperienced beginner. He's not a mere fledgling anymore. Instead, over time, he has become highly skilled. He is proficient in reading, writing, and even playing the lute.
We see that Marcus Aurelius actively nurtured Blasius's education. Blasius serves in the domestic household of a man who was first and foremost a devoted thinker. And because he is such a philosopher, Marcus absolutely detests or deeply, deeply hates complaining. Blasius notes that questioning his lot in life will get him absolutely nowhere, simply because the emperor detests that kind of ungratefulness.
Think about the image of a man sitting in a freezing war tent, surrounded by a brutal military campaign, just quietly writing philosophical observations. It's incredibly powerful. Even while surrounded by all this war, Marcus Aurelius journals daily about the deep complexities and the messy imperfections of being human.
He writes about the paradoxes of life. He recognizes that things which seem totally contradictory on the surface can actually both be deeply true at the exact same time. Like, it's a massive paradox that a man holding absolute imperial power would view a domestic slave as his natural human equal. And in these personal writings, the emperor willingly admits that, like all men, he has flaws, slight imperfections. He doesn't pretend to be perfect for a second, which, let's be honest, is pretty rare for a guy who literally rules the known world. This incredible self-awareness makes him a beautifully complex historical figure, and it firmly cements the word flaw into our minds. To round out the 20 words, the source unit gives us terms dealing with truth and time. Whether it's committing perjury on the witness stand, noticing a tiny detail that is slightly amiss, or recalling a truly notable prior event, these are the words that define how we observe the world around us.
Now, the really crucial takeaway here is that once you understand a word in one context, like Blasio's being nurtured by the emperor, you can apply it literally anywhere. Let's do a little rapid-fire testing right from the sources workbook. Abraham Lincoln's mind was nurtured by books. An honest mistake isn't perjury, and impoverished people living in a rich land is a striking paradox. Seeing these words applied like this just proves how incredibly versatile they really are.
And, as the source material points out, language completely bridges eras. It doesn't matter if you are talking about Roman legionnaires and Stoic philosophers, or the brawling rival families of Montague and Capulet in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Human nature stays exactly the same, and we need the exact same vocabulary to describe it.
The source material actually takes it a step further. It challenges us to go find these exact same words out in the wild, embedded in classic literature. For example, let's look at a quick excerpt from Mark Twain's famous novel, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
Twain writes that a character looked flustered. So the source hits us with a fantastic question. Someone who is flustered is not which of the following: steady, agitated, confused, or tired. Well, think back for a second to our Roman emperor. He faced chaotic battles, unruly senators, yet he was never agitated or confused.
So what is the exact opposite of being flustered? If you guess steady, you are absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. That perfectly demonstrates your grasp of the word's antonym, and all you had to do was remember the steady, unbothered nature of Marcus Aurelius.
This has been such a brilliant journey through language today. We've seen firsthand how anchoring words to a truly vivid historical narrative, feeling the freezing cold of the frontier, hearing that sudden salvo of arrows, and witnessing the steady calm of a great leader, makes these concepts stick in your brain so much better than a rote, boring dictionary list ever could.
So, as you take these 20 words out into your own life, and maybe start using them to describe the brawls, the paradoxes, or the notable events of your own day, I want to leave you with the workbook's final, super provocative writing prompt. The emperor believed no man is given more hardship than he can endure. Based on your own observations and the powerful words we've unpacked today, do you agree? Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer. Keep learning and stay observant.